We pretended to be boyfriends, but it started to feel real. It was supposed to be a harmless lie. One weekend, a quick trip back to my hometown, a family gathering I didn't want to face alone, not with the endless questions, the forced smiles, and the pressure to explain why I was still single. So, I asked him, my best friend, my roommate, the one person who never judged me, who made everything easier just by being around. I said, "What if you came with me? Pretend to be my boyfriend for a couple of days." He laughed, rolled his eyes, said it was ridiculous. But then he agreed. What I didn't expect was how natural it felt once we got there. The way he reached for my hand without hesitation. The way he looked at me when no one else was watching. The way I started to forget we were pretending. And that scared me more than anything. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens when a simple game of make-believe becomes something way too real. Let me take you back to the moment we crossed a line we swore we wouldn't, and how nothing was ever the same after. It started as a joke. I had just gotten off the phone with my mom, who, as always, managed to turn a casual, "Are you coming home for the weekend?" into a full-blown inquisition about my love life, or lack thereof. "She means well," I told Chris, pacing our apartment kitchen while he sat at the counter, eating cereal like it was dinner. "But seriously, if I have to hear one more time about how happy Evan is with his girlfriend and how I deserve the same..." "You're gonna explode," he finished with a smirk. "Exactly." He shrugged, spoon halfway to his mouth. "So bring someone." "Yeah, like who?" I said, rolling my eyes. "I can barely get a guy to text me back, let alone survive a weekend with my extended family." And then I said it, without thinking, without expecting him to actually respond. "What if you came with me? Pretended to be my boyfriend?" Chris choked on his cereal. I laughed, half in embarrassment, half in amusement. "I'm kidding, kind of." But he didn't laugh. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and looked at me thoughtfully. "I mean," he said slowly, "it wouldn't be the weirdest thing we've done." That stopped me. "You're serious?" He shrugged. "Why not? You'd get your nosy relatives off your back, and I'd get free food and a break from this place." I stared at him. Chris, my straight roommate, my best friend since sophomore year of college, the guy who once helped me through the worst breakup of my life by watching sad rom-coms and roasting every single one, was offering to pretend to be my boyfriend for a weekend in front of my family. "Would it be that weird?" he asked, voice lower now, watching me carefully. "I mean, it's just for fun, right?" I nodded. "Right, just for the weekend." By the time we pulled into my parents' driveway that Friday, my heart was pounding. Chris looked completely relaxed, wearing that easy smile he always had. He was dressed in one of those flannels that made him look like he'd just stepped out of a fall clothing catalog, hair slightly messy in the way that only made him look better. "You okay?" he asked, leaning over to grab our bags from the back seat. "Yeah," I lied. "You sure?" "Because you've been breathing like you just ran a marathon." I forced a laugh. "I'm fine, just don't say anything about sports. My uncle still thinks I like football." "Got it," he said, smirking. "I'll pretend to be into you instead." He winked. It was harmless. It was a joke. But something fluttered in my chest, and I didn't know what to do with that. The first few hours were easier than I expected. Chris charmed everyone, of course. My mom hugged him like he was already family. My younger cousins asked him to play board games. Even my dad seemed impressed when Chris offered to help carry firewood in from the shed. But the strangest part? He kept reaching for my hand. At first, it was just for show. a quick gesture when someone was looking, a hand resting casually on my back. But then it started happening when no one else was around. Like in the kitchen, when it was just us making popcorn. He passed me the salt and our fingers touched, longer than they should have. Or when we sat outside under the patio lights, just the two of us, and he leaned his knee against mine. Light. Almost nothing. Almost. When we got ready for bed that night, we hesitated. My parents had put us in the guest room together, of course. One bed. Of course. "You cool with this?" I asked, avoiding his eyes. Chris shrugged, pulling off his hoodie. "I trust you to keep your hands to yourself." I laughed, grateful for the joke, until he looked at me and added softer, "But I wouldn't mind if you didn't." I froze. He didn't say anything else, just crawled into bed and turned off the light. And as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. It was supposed to be pretend, but the way he said that, it didn't feel like pretend at all. The next morning felt strange. Not because we woke up in the same bed, we'd shared worse sleeping arrangements back in college, but because I woke up already facing him, close, too close. He was still half asleep, his arm flung lazily across the blanket that separated us, his hair sticking up on one side, his mouth slightly open. I'd seen him like this before, sure. But now, with everything that had happened last night echoing in my head, it felt different. I slipped out of bed carefully and went downstairs before I could think too much. But thinking too much was kind of what I did best. All through breakfast, I caught myself watching him, the way he smiled at my mom when she offered him more pancakes, the way his fingers brushed mine again when we reached for the syrup at the same time, the way my aunts looked at us like we were already married. It was just pretend. I had to keep reminding myself of that. But the problem was, it didn't feel like pretending anymore. After breakfast, we walked down the street to the little farmer's market my hometown sets up every Saturday. My mom insisted we enjoy a romantic stroll, while she stayed back with the rest of the family. Chris thought it was hilarious. I thought it was terrifying. As we walked between booths and dodged strollers and golden retrievers, he kept glancing at me. "What?" I finally asked. He smiled. "You're jumpy." "I'm fine." "You say that a lot when you're not fine." I stopped walking. "Why are you doing this?" He frowned. "Doing what?" "Touching me like that. Looking at me like that. Saying things you know I'll overanalyze." Chris took a step back, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't mean to mess with your head." "Well," I said quietly, "you did." He exhaled slowly. "I guess I didn't expect this to feel so easy." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, eyes locked on mine, "I didn't think pretending to be your boyfriend would actually feel good. Natural. Like something I didn't want to stop." The world tilted for a second. I didn't know what to say. "Is that weird?" he asked. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out, so I just shook my head. We stood there, surrounded by strangers and sunflowers and the smell of kettle corn, locked in some invisible space between what we said we were and what we were becoming. That night, back at the house, things were quiet again. We watched a movie with my cousins, sitting side by side on the living room floor. At one point, Chris threw a blanket over both of us and leaned into me. Casual, easy, like it was nothing. But my whole body lit up. Later, when everyone was asleep, we found ourselves back in bed. Same room, same closeness. Except this time, neither of us moved away. Chris was staring at the ceiling. I was staring at him. I wasn't lying, he said suddenly, voice low in the dark. About not wanting it to stop. I swallowed. Why are you telling me this? He turned his head toward me. Even in the dark, I could feel the weight of his eyes. Because I think I'd regret it if I didn't. I didn't sleep much after that. Not because I was uncomfortable, but because I didn't know what scared me more, that he meant it, or that I wanted him to, or the next day felt heavier. Not in a bad way, just heavier. Like there was something between us now that neither of us wanted to say out loud. Something hanging in the air like a pause before a kiss. We didn't talk about what Chris said the night before. We didn't bring up the whole I wasn't lying thing. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. The way he said it. The way he looked at me in the dark. Like he was waiting for me to decide what it all meant. I didn't know what it meant. That afternoon, the family decided to head out to the lake. Everyone packed towels and snacks and folding chairs. My mom even brought the old cooler we used to drag around on beach days when we were kids. It was a tradition. Chris rode with me. The car ride was mostly quiet, except for the music. Some soft acoustic playlist he threw on without thinking. But every once in a while, he'd glance at me. Just for a second, like he was checking in. Like he was asking, "Are you okay with this? With us?" And every time I looked away. We set up near the water. The younger cousins ran toward the lake, splashing and yelling. My mom laid out sandwiches. Chris helped my uncle unfold the tent. He looked so at ease around my family, it scared me. Because I wasn't pretending anymore. I watched him from across the sand, shirtless, laughing with my brother over some dumb inside joke they'd already shared 3 times. And something about the way he moved, the way he looked at me when he caught me watching, made my chest tighten. Later, we went walking, just the 2 of us, up along the trail near the trees. The sun was lower now, casting golden light through the leaves. It was quiet, peaceful. But I wasn't at peace. "Can I ask you something?" I said finally, kicking a rock out of the path. "Sure," he said. "Why'd you say yes? To this? The whole fake boyfriend thing?" He was quiet for a beat. Then, "Because I wanted to see what it would be like." "Being my boyfriend?" He nodded once. "Yeah." I stopped walking. He stopped too. I turned to face him. "And?" His voice was lower now. "It's not that different from being your best friend. Except I get to look at you like this and not feel weird about it." I didn't know how to respond to that. Every part of me was fighting to stay still. And then he did it. He reached out and touched my jaw, gently, like he was testing gravity. His thumb brushed just under my cheekbone. Slow, soft, and I froze. Not because I didn't want it, because I wanted it too much. "You don't have to say anything," he murmured. "I just needed to do that. Once." But the moment he started to pull his hand away, I grabbed it, held it there, pressed his palm against my face and closed my eyes. I don't know how long we stood like that. I just know it was long enough for my whole world to shift. He leaned forward slightly, forehead nearly touching mine. Our breaths tangled. Everything in me screamed to move, to kiss him, to do something. But I didn't, and neither did he. Instead, we stepped back at the same time. "I should get back," I said, voice barely steady. "Yeah," he nodded. "Me too." The walk back was silent, and the silence was louder than anything either of us could have said. That night, lying in bed with his back turned toward me, I couldn't sleep, because something had happened, something irreversible. And now I couldn't tell if we were still pretending, or if pretending had become the lie. I barely spoke to him the next morning, not because I was mad, not even because I was scared, but because I didn't trust myself not to say everything I'd been holding in since that moment on the trail. Since his hand touched my face and my entire body betrayed me with how much it wanted more. Chris didn't push. He acted normal. Too normal. Like nothing had happened. Like maybe it had all been in my head. But it hadn't. I knew it. He knew it too. The rest of the weekend went by in this weird, quiet rhythm. We were polite around my family, still close enough to look like a couple. But there was something colder between us now. Not distance, exactly. Just restraint. Careful restraint. Until my cousin's engagement dinner. My mom asked us to come help set up. I tried to say no, to find an excuse to stay behind and breathe for a second. But Chris said yes for both of us. He always did that. Took the pressure off of me, even when I didn't ask. The dinner was loud, chaotic, full of small-town gossip and long tables of food. Everyone was happy. Everyone was drunk on champagne and stories and childhood nostalgia. Everyone but me. We were sitting side by side, and Chris kept glancing at me, like he was waiting for me to talk. I didn't. I couldn't. Then it happened. Someone, I don't even remember who, raised a glass and made a toast. To Chris and my name, they said with a big smile. The most perfect couple here. I hope you two are next. Everyone clapped, and laughed, and stared. Chris froze. I looked straight ahead. It was a joke, a dumb toast. But it felt like a match dropped in the middle of everything we'd been holding back. Afterward, outside in the backyard where it was finally quiet, he turned to me. Are you okay? I let out a bitter laugh. You're really asking me that? He shifted his weight, looking unsure for the first time all weekend. Yeah, I am. You touched me, Chris. You looked at me like you meant it, and then you spent the last 2 days pretending it never happened. His jaw tightened. I was giving you space. I didn't need space, I snapped. I needed the truth. We were both breathing too fast now. The crickets were loud in the background, like a bad soundtrack for a worse conversation. He took a step closer. You want the truth? Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing, he said. I came here thinking I'd help you out, make things easier for you with your family. And somewhere in the middle of all the pretending, I started wondering what it would feel like if it were real. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. And? I whispered. And then I kissed you with my hands and not my mouth, he said quietly, and I didn't know if I was allowed to want that. I blinked, stunned. Why wouldn't you be? Because you're my best friend, and because if this isn't real for you, I'd rather pretend it never happened than lose what we have. Silence. Again. Always silence. I can't pretend anymore, I said, voice raw. Not after what I felt. He looked at me, really looked, like he was seeing me for the first time. Then don't, he said. But don't ask me to either. And before I could say anything else, he walked back into the house, leaving me alone in the dark, with the truth, and the terrifying possibility that maybe we weren't faking it at all. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. I barely tasted the food, barely laughed at the stories. I just kept replaying what he said out there in the dark. The look on his face when he said he didn't know what he was doing. The way he walked away after dropping the one truth I had been craving to hear for days. I can't pretend anymore. I didn't know what scared me more, that we had crossed a line, or that I didn't want to cross back. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I couldn't sleep. The room felt smaller. My skin felt tighter. everything felt louder. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about what might have happened if I'd said more, if I'd stopped him from walking away. Then the door opened. Quietly. Slowly. It was Chris. He stepped in without saying a word, closing the door gently behind him. I sat up, heart racing. He didn't turn on the light. He just stood there, like he wasn't sure he should be here. But I was sure. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, voice hoarse. He shook his head. "Not after that." He crossed the room and sat at the edge of the bed, hands clasped, elbows on his knees. I waited, not moving, barely breathing. "I'm not great at this," he said, "at saying the right thing when it matters." "You did just fine earlier." "Yeah," he scoffed lightly, "except for the part where I walked away from you." He finally turned to look at me. "I didn't want to push you," he said. "I didn't want you to feel like this was something I expected, like I came here with a plan to change us." "And if it changed anyway?" I asked. He was quiet for a long time. Then he reached out, slow, deliberate, and touched my hand. "I don't want to be just your best friend anymore," he whispered. "I haven't for a while." I couldn't speak. The words were there, trapped behind the tight knot in my chest. So I didn't speak. I moved. I leaned forward and pressed my forehead to his. It was soft, intentional. The space between us disappeared like it had never been there in the first place. He breathed in like it hurt. And when he kissed me, it wasn't a question anymore. It was the answer. Slow, deep, honest. His hands found my jaw, my neck. He pulled me in like he was afraid I'd vanish. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to hold back. Not who I was, not what I wanted, not what I felt. We didn't say much after. Just laid there in the dark, side by side, his fingers tangled in mine. "I don't want to leave when the weekend's over," he said. "Then don't." He looked over at me. "I mean it." "So do I." We fell asleep like that, closer than ever, no space left to pretend. But when I woke up the next morning, the bed was empty. His side was cold, and his bag was gone. He left. No note, no text, just silence. I spent 2 days wondering if any of it had been real, or if I'd just imagined everything I wanted to believe. Then he showed up. At my door. Eyes tired, heart wide open. "I ran," he said. "Because feeling all of that scared me. But being without you scared me more." I didn't say a word. I just pulled him into me and didn't let go. If you've ever felt something real and didn't know what to do with it, maybe it's not too late to say what you couldn't before. Because sometimes, the love that feels the scariest is the one worth choosing. Subscribe, like, and turn on notifications if this story moved you, and share it with someone who still believes in love that starts with friendship and ends with truth.